The rain-slicked streets of Brooklyn gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights. But I barely noticed as my heart thundered louder than the storm. I was running from the truth. From him. From the way his voice had cracked when he called me his canary just hours ago. And now, here I was, cornered in an alley, his broad frame blocking my escape, his breath warm against my face as he whispered, "You can't keep running, Eli." My name is Elias Carter, a 24-year-old painter scraping by in a city that chews up dreamers like me. I'd always been the quiet one, the kid with paint-stained fingers and a sketchbook full of secrets. Growing up in a small Ohio town, I learned early to hide who I was in my art, my heart, my truth. But New York was supposed to be different. It was supposed to be freedom. That's what I thought until I met Jasper Kane, the man who turned my world upside down with a single smirk. Jasper was everything I wasn't: bold, unapologetic, a 27-year-old mechanic with biceps that strained against his flannel shirts and a laugh that could stop traffic. We met 3 months ago at a dive bar in Williamsburg, where I was sketching strangers to avoid my own loneliness. He slid into the booth across from me, his hazel eyes glinting with mischief, and said, "You look like a canary in a coal mine, bright, but stuck somewhere dark." I laughed, thinking it was a line, but the nickname stuck. He called me that every time we met, his voice wrapping around the word like it was a promise. That night, we talked until the bar closed, trading stories of broken homes and big dreams. Jasper grew up in foster care, bouncing between houses in the Bronx, learning to fix cars and hearts with equal skill. I told him about the canvases I hid from my parents, the ones that screamed colors they'd never understand. By the time we stumbled into the chilly dawn, I knew I was falling for him. But falling for Jasper was like diving into a storm you couldn't predict where you'd land. Our romance wasn't easy. Jasper was out and proud, a beacon in a world that still threw shadows. I was still half in the closet, terrified of what it meant to love him openly. Every touch, every stolen kiss in the back of his garage or under the High Line, felt like a rebellion against the voice in my head that whispered, "You're not enough." My family back in Ohio didn't know about Jasper, didn't know I was gay. I'd spent years dodging their questions, sending vague texts about city life. But Jasper didn't push. He'd just grin and say, "My canary's gonna sing one day. I'll wait." Tonight, though, something had shifted. We'd been at his apartment, sprawled on his couch, when he brought up the Pride Parade. "Come with me, Eli," he said, his voice soft but firm. "Not as my friend, as my boyfriend." The word hit me like a punch. Boyfriend. It was real. Too real. And I panicked. I mumbled something about needing air and bolted, leaving him staring after me with hurt in his eyes. Now, in this alley, he'd found me. His hands gripped my shoulders. Not hard, but steady, pinning me against the brick wall. The rain plastered his dark hair to his forehead, and his leather jacket glistened. "Why do you keep running from this?" he asked, his voice low, almost pleading. "From us." "I'm scared." "Okay," I snapped, my voice shaking. "You're so sure of yourself. Jasper, you're this alpha, this force. And I'm just, you're my canary." He cut in, stepping closer. His hand slid to my cheek, thumb brushing away a raindrop or maybe a tear. "You're bright and beautiful, and you don't even see it." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But the weight of my fear off my family's judgment, of the world's cruelty pressed down on me. What if I can't do this? I whispered. What if I'm not strong enough? Jasper's eyes softened, but his grip didn't waver. Then I'll be strong enough for both of us. But you gotta let me in, Eli. Before I could answer, headlights swept through the alley. A car slowed, and a voice shouted something ugly, a slur that cut through the rain like a blade. Jasper tensed, his body shielding mine instinctively. The car sped off, but the word lingered, heavy and poisonous. "Don't listen to them," Jasper said, his voice fierce now. "They don't get to define us." But they did. Or at least, they had for me. For years. I pulled away, my heart racing. "I need time. Jasper. I'm sorry." He let me go, but his eyes followed me as I slipped out of the alley, the rain hiding my tears. I didn't know where I was going, only that I couldn't face him not yet. The next morning, I woke up in my tiny studio apartment, the canvas on my easel staring at me like an accusation. I hadn't painted in weeks. Not since Jasper started filling my nights with laughter and my days with longing. My latest piece, a chaotic swirl of yellows and blues, inspired by his nickname for Mua's unfinished. Just like me. I avoided Jasper's texts all day, each one a stab of guilt. "You okay? Canary. Talk to me. Eli. Please." I wanted to reply, but every time I typed, my fingers froze. What could I say? That I loved him, but was too weak to show it. That I was terrified of losing him, but even more terrified of losing myself. By evening, I couldn't stand the silence. I grabbed my sketchbook and headed to the High Line, our spot, where we'd spent countless nights watching the city pulse below. I hoped he'd be there, but I dreaded it too. When I saw him leaning against the railing, his silhouette sharp against the sunset, my breath caught. He was alone, his usual confidence replaced by something softer, almost broken. "Eli," he said when he saw me, his voice careful. "You came." I had to, I admitted, clutching my sketchbook like a shield. "I owe you an explanation." He shook his head. "You don't owe me anything. I need to know you're not giving up on us." We sat on a bench, the city humming around us. I told him everything about my parents' expectations, their church that preached love but practiced judgment, about the nights I'd spent staring at my ceiling, wondering if I'd ever be brave enough to live my truth. Jasper listened, his hand resting on mine, steady as always. "I came out when I was 16, he said when I finished. Got kicked out of my foster home the same day. I thought I'd never survive it. But I did. Because I had to. Because I refused to let anyone else tell me who I was." His words hit me hard. I envied his courage, his fire. "How do you do it?" I asked. "How do you face the hate and keep going?" Jasper smiled, but it was tinged with pain. "I don't always. Some days, it's like swallowing glass. But then I think about people like Yumi Canary, lighting up the dark. You make it worth it." I wanted to kiss him right there, to let the world see us. But my fear held me back. Instead, I opened my sketchbook and showed him a drawing I'd done of him, his strong jaw, his warm eyes, the way he looked at me like I was enough. "It's beautiful," he said, his voice thick. "You're beautiful." For a moment, we were just us, two hearts beating in sync. But then a group of tourists passed, their whispers sharp and judgmental. I pulled my hand away, and Jasper's face fell. "I'm trying. Jasper," I said, my voice barely audible. "I swear I am." "I know," he replied, but there was a distance in his eyes now, a crack in his armor. "But I can't keep waiting forever." That night, I went home and painted. I poured every emotion, fear, love, shame, hope onto the canvas. By dawn, I had something raw and real, a portrait of Jasper and me, our hands entwined against a backdrop of city lights and storm clouds. It was my truth, or at least the start of it. But the next day, everything changed. I got a call from my sister, Hannah. Back in Ohio. Mom found your old sketchbook, she said, her voice tight. The one with, you know. She's freaking out. Eli. Dad too. They're talking about coming to New York. Panic clawed at me. That sketchbook was from high school, filled with drawings of boys I'd never dared speak to, feelings I'd buried deep. If my parents were coming, they'd demand answers I wasn't ready to give. And Jasper, he deserved more than a boyfriend who couldn't even face his own family. I texted him, I need to figure this out. I'm sorry. Then I turned off my phone, my heart breaking with every word. The next week was a blur of dread and avoidance. My parents' impending visit loomed like a storm cloud, and I hadn't spoken to Jasper since my text. His silence was worse than any argument. I threw myself into painting, finishing the portrait of us. But every brushstroke felt like a goodbye. When my parents arrived, they insisted on meeting at a diner in Manhattan. I sat across from them, my hands shaking under the table. Mom's eyes were red, Dad's jaw tight. We found your drawings, Elias, Mom said, her voice trembling. Why didn't you tell us? I wanted to lie, to say it was a phase. But Jasper's face flashed in my mind his strength, his belief in me. Because I was scared, I admitted. I'm gay, Mom. I've always been. The silence that followed was deafening. Dad stood and walked out, leaving Mom staring at me like I was a stranger. We love you, she said finally. But it's not what we raised you to be. I left the diner feeling hollow. I wandered the city, ending up at Jasper's garage in Brooklyn. He was under a car, his hands smeared with grease. But when he saw me, he dropped everything. Eli, he said, his voice soft but guarded. What's wrong? I told him about my parents, the sketchbook, the diner. He listened, his expression unreadable. When I finished, he wiped his hands on a rag and stepped closer. You told them, he said, almost in awe. That's huge. Canary. But they hate me, I said, my voice breaking. And I've been pushing you away. And I'm so sorry. Jasper, I don't know how to do this. He pulled me into his arms. And for the first time in days, I felt safe. You're doing it, he said. You're fighting. That's enough for now. We spent the night in his apartment, talking, crying, laughing. He told me about his own battles, the slurs he'd faced, the family he'd built from friends who loved him for who he was. You don't need their approval, he said. You need your own. The next day, I made a decision. I called my sister and told her I was staying in New York, living my truth, with or without our parents' blessing. Hannah was quiet for a moment, then said, I'm proud of you, Eli. And I want to meet this guy who's got you so messed up. I laughed, relief flooding me. But the real test came that weekend. Jasper invited me to an art show in Soho, where he'd secretly submitted my portrait of us. You deserve to be seen, he told me. The gallery was packed, the air buzzing with voices. My painting hung on the wall, vibrant and unapologetic. People stopped, whispered, admired. I felt exposed, but Jasper's hand in mine grounded me. Then I saw my parents walk in. I froze, but Jasper squeezed my hand. You got this, he whispered. Mom approached first, her eyes on the painting. This is you, she said. Not a question. And him. I nodded, my throat tight. Yeah, this is us. Dad stood behind her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, I thought they'd leave again. But then Mom reached out, her hand trembling, and touched my arm. It's beautiful, she said. I don't understand it yet, but I want to. It wasn't acceptance. Not fully. But it was a start. The weeks after the art show were a whirlwind. My parents returned to Ohio. But Mom started texting me. Small messages at first: saw a painting today. Thought of you. Then longer ones. Asking about my life. About Jasper. It wasn't perfect. But it was progress. Dad was slower. His silence heavy. But I held on to Jasper's words. You need your own approval. Jasper and I grew closer. Our love a quiet rebellion against the world's noise. We went to Pride together. My first time. And I wore a yellow scarf. A nod to his nickname for me. He laughed, pulling me into a kiss in the middle of the crowd. And for once, I didn't look over my shoulder. But life wasn't a fairy tale. The garage where Jasper worked was struggling, and he poured every spare moment into keeping it afloat. I helped where I could, selling a few paintings to cover bills. But the stress wore on him. One night, I found him in the garage, staring at a car he couldn't fix. I'm failing. Eli, he said, his voice raw. I'm supposed to be the strong one, but I'm drowning. I took his hand, pulling him close. You don't have to be strong all the time, I said. Let me be your canary for once. That night, we made a plan. I'd submit more paintings to galleries, and he'd look for investors for the garage. We were a team, stronger together. And slowly, things turned around. A gallery in Chelsea bought 3 of my pieces, and Jasper found a local businessman willing to back his shop. One evening, as we sat on the High Line, the city glittering below, Jasper turned to me. You know why I call you my canary? He asked. Because I'm bright and stuck in the dark, I teased, echoing his first words to me. He shook his head, his eyes serious. Because you're my warning, my hope. You remind me there's light even when everything feels heavy. I kissed him, my heart full. And you're my alpha, I said. Not because you pin me to walls, but because you make me feel safe enough to be me. We laughed, the sound mingling with the city's hum. The world wasn't perfect. There were still slurs, still judgment, still battles to fight. But we had each other, and that was enough. Months later, I stood in front of a new canvas. This one for a solo show. It was us again, but different, 2 figures standing side by side, hands clasped, facing a horizon that burned with possibility. The title, Canary and Alpha. As I painted, Jasper came up behind me, his arms wrapping around my waist. Sing for me, Canary, he whispered. And for the first time, I did.